are these people?
This story's been on everyone's mind pretty much. You can't escape it if you're
Yeah,
on Twitter.
yeah.
So
Hopefully I do this justice. I probably won't because there's just so much that has just been inundated from this over the past few days, and just really this is 7 decades of shite that we've had to deal with this. So we're probably going to be talking about this more in depth over the next few weeks. But we just want to kind of get a little taste as to and try and get more the perspective of not our politicians who are on the wrong side of history regarding this issue, and actually try and get some actual voices who have spoke on this in the past, who have spoke on this currently, and just trying to get more of the other side in terms of this conflict. So we pulled this from Common Dreams. The Common Dreams staff wrote this over the weekend, where they write, horrific, unjustified, morally wrong, but unprovoked. Nothing about Saturday was unprovoked. After the Palestinian group Hamas launched the biggest attack on Israel in years, with many killed, hostages taken, and fighting raging, many U.S. elected officials released statements Saturday condemning the unprovoked attacks. But many others took to Twitter Saturday to ask incredulously how Israel's continued brutal occupation of the Palestinian people cannot be considered a provocation. So this is from Ahirzar, who tweeted 75 years of ethnic cleansing, 15 years of blockade, confiscation of Palestinian lands, programs on Palestinian towns, desecration of Palestinian sacred sites, daily raids into Palestinian homes, constant humiliation of an entire people. Nothing about Saturday is provoked.
unprovoked.
Unprovoked. So this tweet is from Pearls and Irritations, where they write, it's clear by now that whenever you see the word unprovoked being forcibly repeated in a uniform way across the entire political media class, whatever they're talking about was definitely massively provoked. And actually, Caitlin Johnson actually retweeted that. Next one. So this is where, this is where
this
the
asshole.
Yeah. So this is where the fuckery starts. With Hakeem, well, obviously Hakeem Jeffries. We're not going to read all of this because it's just bullshit, but and a lot of you have seen this on Twitter, so we'll kind of go speed run through a lot of these. But he basically writes, my statement on the violent, unprovoked, and despicable terrorist attack by Hamas against the state of Israel. He made a statement. Who else wrote a statement?
This guy.
RFK. Yeah, we're not going to read that because
same thing, pretty much.
More or less the same thing. Fetterman, I forcibly condemn these cowardly, horrifying, unprovoked attacks on Israel by Hamas.
Which clone was that? Is that clone number 3 or clone number 4?
Sure.
Fetterman version 3.0?
Yeah. I unequivocally stand with the people of Israel now and always. Mondaire Jones, who lost his seat, is also now making some claims as well. I'm horrified by the unprovoked, heinous attacks against Israel by Hamas, a terrorist organization. I stand in support of our ally Israel and the Israeli people as they fight to defend themselves and protect their sovereignty. Yep. And Richie Torres, another asshole. As a steadfast supporter and ally of Israel, and I unequivocally condemn the unprovoked and unprecedented terrorist attack launched by Hamas and stand with the people of Israel as it rightly defends itself. And he wrote a statement. Again, care? Well, we care, but so I pulled this from AJ Plus, just to give you guys an idea of, so this, so Hamas basically broke through the wall, what if you can call it that, essentially a fence, over the weekend in an act of resistance. That's what we're going to call it here. So we just want to give, so AJ Plus actually gave a decent demonstration as to what happened and the implications of this since the Zionist occupation overtook Israel back in 1948. So you can go ahead, Reef, and play.
When is a border not a border? When it's a fence that Israel built to create the world's biggest open-air prison. Since March 30, 2018, thousands of Palestinian refugees trapped inside Gaza have taken part in the March of Return, demanding the right to return to their homes in what is now Israel. Israel built a 25-mile fence and has shot people protesting near it, saying it's defending its border. But this fence isn't a border. You know how we know that? Because Israel said so back in the 1990s. When Israel and the Palestinian Authority signed the Oslo agreements, this is how they talked about the fence. The security fence erected by Israel around the Gaza Strip and the line demarcated by the fence shall be authoritative only for the purpose of the agreement. That acknowledges that the line followed by the fence is not a border. Israel wants to portray Gaza as a separate country full of people who want to invade Israel. In fact, international law says Gaza is still under Israeli occupation.
The idea that there is actual Palestinian sovereignty in the Gaza Strip or even the West Bank is false. Israel continues to control all aspects of life in the Gaza Strip, and as such is deemed under international law to still be the occupying force.
In 2010, the UN called Gaza a large open-air prison, and it's not hard to see why. There are only 5 crossing points on the Israeli fence, and 3 of those have been closed for years. Of the 2 that remain, only 1 of those is for people. In September 2018, Israel allowed less than 6,000 people to exit through the Erez crossing. Israel even limits what goes into Gaza through the fence. Sage, cardamom, ginger, dried fruit, and potato chips have all been on the prohibited list.
It controls things that demonstrate the degree to which it occupies the territory, including the population registry. So if someone is born in the Gaza Strip and they are not registered within the Israeli authorities, they do not exist. They are unable to travel outside of the Gaza Strip.
More than 2/3 of people living in Gaza are registered refugees whose families were forced out of their homes by Zionist militias in 1948 in what became Israel. Israel's Jewish majority was cemented by expelling 4 out of every 5 Palestinians who had lived there. So this fence stands between Palestinians and their former homes, from which they were evicted and to which they've been forbidden from returning. It confines them to a strip of land in which they've been imprisoned as refugees for generations. To the Palestinians of Gaza taking part in the March of Return, they're not breaching another country's borders. They're simply attempting to go home.
Which, by the way, the March of Return was their... I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I say something?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
I was just going to say the March of Return, which was their peaceful protest. And what did the IDF do? Target hospital people, medics, journalists, shot people in the limbs, killed people, whatnot. So to sit here and say that the Palestinians haven't tried a peaceful way is just a lie. And not to mention, this is so hypocritical right now with all these people out here condemning what's going on, saying what Hamas did was brutal and barbaric and whatnot. When the IDF does shoot and maim somebody, are they considered brutal and barbaric? When they mow the lawn in Israel, what they call it, just carpet bombing, and they're pulling Palestinian children out of rubble on a regular basis, is that not barbaric? I mean, the hypocrisy is just ridiculous. And like I say this all the time, if you simply look at the scoreboard on the last 12 years and all these conflicts before what happened this weekend, it's almost over 5,000 and change Palestinians killed, right? They're kept just above starvation in Gaza over there because they're limited to what they can get, as you saw in that video over there, to just 250 Israelis that have been killed over the same amount of time. It's so unequal, it's ridiculous. So the hypocrisy runs deep. And I said this, I put this tweet out there, and I was waiting to put it out there because, once again, I'm not trying to try to glorify any taking of women, children, and civilians, but the lies in the mainstream media is ridiculous. Slaves do not attack. Slaves revolt, plain and simple. And to not see this coming, and for ignoring it for so long, while the Israeli government is the one who started Hamas and has been funding Hamas even since back 2019. Is that's 2019 is in our rearview mirror, and Netanyahu was talking about funding Hamas and supporting Hamas. This is completely hypocritical right here, and it was been a mask-off moment for a lot of us here, especially those populist right people who we thought were forming a coalition and were actually anti-war. They're not.
No.
Right.
Especially when right around the corner from this is China. On top of that, they're willing to throw their hat into. So, you might know this lady, Fiorella.
Yeah. So as I said, P had to smack me a little bit because
Yeah.
I was saying some stuff over the weekend that she had to.
Not bad to be smacked by Fee, right? Not a bad thing.
We've all been there.
Please, Fee. You don't disregard that. Don't watch that, right?
Yeah, but she had to, in her way, she had to educate me on a couple of things that I was saying, and also Indy too. So I do want to. I'll get to where I kind of made him retract some things I said online. But Fee said, I'm going to dispel 4 myths about this conflict. Number 1, for fuck's sake, this war isn't Israel versus Hamas, it's Israel versus Palestine. Stop equating Palestine to Hamas. Hamas is one of many resistance forces and is not part of the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, which Fatah is part of. There are also resistance forces outside Palestine, like Hezbollah, that support Palestine.
Yeah.
This is a Vanessa Beeley thing too, as well. Vanessa Beeley talks deep, about that. So if you want to know a little bit more about the fact that it's just not Hamas, and listen, the way they frame it, it's Hamas, so therefore they can justify what they want to do, the ethnic cleansing that they want to do. They can justify it by saying it's Hamas, it's terrorists, it's Hamas, because even the leftists in our Congress call Hamas terrorists. So please continue.
Right.
Yeah. What Hamas is and isn't. Hamas, on that note, has various factions and is a divided and divisive group. There are certainly rogue factions, and the group as a whole is entirely trusted due to its creation by the US and Israel to undermine socialist government in Palestine, funding, and past grievances. But Hamas has been used as a red herring to distract from all of Israel's war crimes of the century by tying them to terrorism. This has also been used by Israel to attack Palestinian civilians countless times, saying that they were going after Hamas. Americans and Westerners who were propagandized against Muslims after our government created and radicalized actual terrorist groups to accomplish 9/11 and then the war on terror easily fall for this trope.
Yep. Yeah, and we got a story from Vanessa up later, so definitely make sure people read their homework,
So number 3, this narrative that Israel must have let this happen, by all accounts, appears to be false Zionist deterrence. The idea that Israel is too high-tech, too powerful, and too intelligent to fail is only a plausible idea if we are led to believe everything we hear in the West is true. Israel, after all, has only attacked women and children with rocks and fire as a weapon, since most of the older men are in prison or dead. It's also true if you believe that you can dismiss all of the work the resistance has been doing for over 75 years, or maybe you don't know. But it truly would require all the resistance forces to be on it, and these people are extremely intelligent. In on it, and these people are extremely intelligent and would have seen through this. Even if you could have some cooperation from inside Israel, that would be the work of the defense forces of Palestine, not of Israel. The truth is that Israel is but a hologram of what it's been projecting out into the world, just like the US. And similarly, like the weapons that are sent to Ukraine, the weapons that are sent to Israel and all of that surveillance intel matters little when it comes to on-the-ground combat and being able to use these weapons with the facility and ease needed. It discounts the fact that scientifically people who had lost everything and all to fight for their very existence have more determination to succeed. Not saying it's impossible, but highly improbable and a very Zionist position to think Israel is invincible. They got caught off guard with their pants down. That's the story. Sorry it hurts so many to believe it, but Goliath can fall. And a lot of what she said there, that was actually something I was thinking in terms of, well, we're sending almost $4 billion to Israel each year. Like, how is it that they were able to, somehow allow this to happen, given, like so that was kind of what I was asking over the weekend, and then Fee and Indy had to kind of correct me in sharing you actually have the wrong take on that. So I do want to retract kind of misstatements that I made on Twitter on that. But, as Fee said, this is something that has been, as far as this resistance has been in the works for over 7 decades. So,
yeah.
So
what did you say that you had to retract, buddy?
Well, I said, I had the idea that, look, we give Israel $4 billion in military aid a year. Mm-hmm. And somehow you would think that with that money that they shouldn't have had this breach in this fence.
It got let happen is what we were thinking.
And I was thinking that in terms of, like Bibi is under trial right now for corruption in government. So the distraction would be nice in terms of, having this be kind of a thing that their people are focused on versus his corruption. So I just kind of figured.
Can I say something?
Yes.
We don't know exactly. We don't know, right? Like, because, there are people, who are kind of saying out there, like, well, isn't it kind of funny that as soon as the Israeli funding stops, this thing happens? Like, and there's a lot of people who believe that this was let to happen. We don't know. I don't believe it was. And let me tell you something, Collin. I'm always in between A and B, where people are like, oh, this is naturally occurrence. How could we not expect the Palestinian resistance to come back and fight after 75 years of oppression, after 17 years of a blockade, after the treatment? They have nothing else. They have nothing to lose at this point. And eventually we saw this happening, and the date it happened 50 years to the day of the 1973 war and Yom Kippur. I don't think it was a war, but a conflict would happen, so it seems like it's a natural thing that happened, but it does let the floodgates open for what a lot of people believe is to come, and that is the flattening of Gaza, the ability to turn it into a 15-minute city, and allow, the next part of the whole phase of the Malthusians to take place, which is, the destruction of the planet, World War III. And a lot of people don't understand that this could spin out into World War III. I always feel it's somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe this was allowed to happen, or it's something that they just said, okay, let's have this happen. The fact that there were 5,000 rockets, let's say there was 2,500 rockets. Those rockets had to be collected over a certain amount of time, hidden, put aside. So it takes some time for that to happen, right? And so the soldiers who broke through, the Hamas fighters or the Palestinian resistance fighters, whichever they were, Norman Finkelstein pointed out that was the first time some of them were on the other side of that fence. Well, that takes a long time to get people mentally in a spot to go and do that and plan that. So I think it's somewhere in between. It's kind of like Lahaina, where a lot of people are like, oh, that's it. They just turned on the switch. They inflamed the place. And that was, the end of it. No, the conditions that led Lahaina to be a tinderbox took place over a couple, decades, right?
Yeah.
The sugar industry, bailing out of there, and all of a sudden they stopped irrigating that place. The grass that was brought in from the cattle that was indigenous of Africa that burns a lot bigger. You know what I'm saying? This stuff happened for quite the water diversion for so many years to have the table set for Lahaina to be a tinderbox.
Right.
Either
and then
way,
they got the sharks
there's
with the laser
always
beams.
The shark. There's either way. There's an apparatus. There's a mechanism. There's a system that comes in, disaster capitalism or a disaster situation, that just goes to work right away to pick up the pieces. So, sometimes it's A, sometimes it's B, sometimes it's in between A and B. So I don't know if that, to excuse that theory, that it is something that could have been let happen. You got the Egyptians saying that they tried to warn.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between and should always be left on the table for discussion.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now Fiorella's going to smack me.
You're used to it, though. That handprint's still there usually. You know.
I'll finish what she said here. There's absolutely zero evidence that Palestinians have been raping women in Israel. None. Not saying bad things don't happen during war because it's war, but I've yet to see any evidence except debunked claims. It is, in fact, another red herring the West has used to blame the people rising up against their foreign policy. So she made an example in another tweet. By the way, there's evidence of Israelis, Palestinian women, plenty of videos I and others have shared. So that's what Fee, shout out to you, said. And actually got a
There's
little
also
bit
no evidence, Collin, of babies being beheaded now.
Beheaded?
We know as well.
Joe Biden's seen it though.
Propaganda,
So,
you know,
right
you know.
babies being beheaded, incubator story all over again. And this is once again the
I know.
propaganda to justify what they want to do. That's what this
Right.
is.
But I've seen plenty of pictures online of dead babies on the Palestinian end.
Yes.
Being pulled out of
which have
rubble.
been very
Literally.
Yeah.
Charred, lifeless, disfigured.
gross.
Like, ugh.
But
Like the time for
So anyway-
pussyfooting around on that issue, I think is done. I can't see that shit and not be angry. You know?
right.
So I mean, it's a turkey shoot, as that scene in JFK would call it. They literally have them blocked off in a 25-mile area and then carpet bombing it. I don't know how more.
Yeah.
Like anyway, but yeah,
He's not the only one
yeah,
to justify the carpet bombing. You know, it's everybody else. I mean, Nikki Haley says wipe them out. You know,
Literally.
and also there's no evidence of Iran being involved, and yet they all want to point the finger to Iran. They want to get us into World War III.
Oh yeah. No, like yeah, it's what war doesn't the West enjoy getting themselves into?
Yeah.
You know, so I guess now that people are kind of a little about Ukraine now it's more or less this, you know, Arab Islamophobia rising its ugly head again now that it's such an easy target for people to get all defensive, which I'm just kind of mad that really coming out of 9/11 that people should really know better.
yeah,
But I think obviously because Israel, and I think for a lot of people, especially in this country, there's a religious tie to the country, you know, like that. I think that kind of pulls in a lot of people to be more sympathetic to the Israelis.
we still have the guy in a prison cell for talking about the war crimes of that last one. You know,
right.
so yeah, but anyway, you brought this as well.
Yeah, so this is from Breaking the Silence. Hamas's attacks and the events unfolded since Saturday are unspeakable. We could talk about their cruel and criminal actions or focus on how our Jewish supremacist government brought us to this point. But as former Israeli soldiers, our job is to talk about what we were sent to do. Fred. Oh,
There you go.
okay. Israel's security policy for decades now has been to manage the conflict. Successive Israeli governments insist on round after round of violence as if any of it will make a difference. They talk about security, deterrence, changing the equation. All of these are code words for bombing the Gaza Strip to a pulp, always justified as targeting terrorists, yet always with heavy civilian casualties. In between these rounds of violence, we make life impossible for Gazians, and then act surprised when it all boils over.
There
Yep.
you go.
I mean, they're
We
war
talk
crimes,
about
literally
Right.
blocking their water and food. Like
we talk
Anyway.
about
They're human animals.
we
right,
talk about normalization with the UAE and now Saudi Arabia, while hoping the world would turn a blind eye to the open air prison we built in our backyard.
Mhm.
Apart from the unfathomable violation of human rights, we created a massive security liability for our own citizens. The question Israelis are all asking is, where were the soldiers Saturday? Why was the IDF seemingly absent while hundreds of Israelis were slaughtered in their homes and on the streets? The unfortunate truth is they were preoccupied in the West Bank. We sent soldiers to secure settler incursions into the Palestinian city of Nablus, to chase Palestinian children to Hebron, to protect settlers as they carried out pogroms. Settlers demand that Palestinian flags are removed from the streets of Hurara, soldiers are sent to do it. And we actually have reported on that story last year.
Yeah, with Brett.
Brett Wilkins. Yeah. Our country decided decades ago that it's willing to forfeit the security of its citizens in our towns and cities in favor of maintaining control over an occupied civilian population of millions, all for the sake of a settler messianic agenda. The idea that we can manage the conflict without ever having to solve it is once again collapsing before our eyes. It held up until now because only few dared to challenge it. These heartbreaking events could change that. They must, for all of us between the river and the sea.
Yep.
So a little bit more. I want to try and get through. Oh, so this is from the Empire Files.
Martin.
I also pulled. Israel can do literally anything without ever being punished, while Palestinians are punished even when they're doing absolutely nothing. And then this is yeah. So had to pull Kwame because he's talked about Zionism, and I think that's the issue that people are not talking about with this whole conflict, is how Zionism is basically the root of all of this. So I just felt like, again, we don't know, and especially for, I have to say this, for Black people like that I've seen online who are basically like, we have nothing to do with this, has been kind of very, not surprising, but kind of disappointing to me, especially since, as I said, especially during the George Floyd protests, Palestinians were the first, or among the first, to show solidarity to Black people in the West and in America, given the George Floyd, and have always been in solidarity with us, even as far back as through the civil rights movement. So the idea that Black people are just like, you know,
you see a lot of the
kind of
DSA people being upset at BLM pushing this out too, because they bought this propaganda. So interesting how that turnaround has happened.
Right.
So,
well, but the argument that I've been making online is that, you know, like, as we've said, listen to our leaders, listen to our ancestors who have spoken about this. Axis spoke about this. We're going to play him in a minute. Collin Radix has spoken about, you know, solidarity. Mandela has spoken about solidarity with the Palestinians among the Black community. So the idea that Black people should not be, I think, is just wrong, especially since given our parallel histories in the West. But here's Kwame Ture talking about a quick clip regarding Zionism, if you want to play that, Reef.
A clear distinction between Judaism, a religion, and Zionism, a political philosophy. Zionism as a political philosophy is illegal, racist, immoral, and unjust. But all unjust systems seek always to dominate religions. Slavery sought to dominate Christianity to the point that some people could actually think that a slave master is a Christian. Of course, a slave master can never be a Christian. So Zionism itself tries to control Judaism and make Jews kill Palestinians in the name of God. Anyone looking at these two systems will come to see the unjust nature of Zionism. We must be involved in this struggle. Martin Luther King was fond of saying that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Consequently, anywhere there is injustice, conscious men and women must support the struggle for justice.
Right. So, as I said, you know, and I tweeted this out, as a Black man, I have to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians, given what our leaders have said in the past, and given how they've supported us in the past and more recently in terms of, and then also, you know, as we've said, you know, our cops are trained by Israeli armed forces. So when, you know, so when Black people get beat up by the cops, you can thank Israel. When you,
the NYPD
as I said,
has a division,
right,
in Israel.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
or when we give money to Israel for military aid, but when it comes to reparations for you, we don't have the money. We get like,
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Terrible.
Or
I mean, which
like
is probably one of
Lahaina,
the
for you, Pasta, like, oh, we don't have money for
exactly.
Lahaina, but we're able to give
Yeah.
a blank check or willing to give another
Good.
blank check to Israel
Yeah.
in light of this. Like, it makes no damn sense.
Then the 150 billion going to Ukraine and
Again,
then nothing to
right
Lahaina.
now. They're sending another 200.
Yeah.
Just letting that slip right
they're
on
trying
through.
to-
That's fine.
I think there was only 200 million, which is nothing. But I mean, that
Yeah,
is
that's
something they're trying to
nothing. You
do right
wouldn't
now.
have-
They're trying to wrap up. They're trying to wrap the Israeli funding bill with the Ukrainian funding bill right now. That's their next trick. They're going to do that to pass it through, you know. And I want to see if I want to see Matt Gaetz stand up against that one too as well. But then again, you know, he's sitting there with Marjorie Taylor Greene going, "Is Ukraine the 51st state? Well, is Israel the 51st state, homeboy? You know me."
Like, figure it out. I mean, where's Hamas buying those weapons at? You even want to talk about that? No? Okay. Well, let's see
All over the place.
Let's see what Malcolm says about stuff. You know, he might have a word.
So whatever kind of action program can be devised to get us the things that are ours by right, then I'm for that kind of action no matter what the action is. I don't think when a man is being criminally treated that some criminal has the right to tell that man what tactics to use to get the criminal off his back. When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever necessary to get that criminal off my back. And the injustice that has been inflicted upon Negroes in this country by Uncle Sam is criminal. Don't blame a cracker in Georgia for your injustices. The government is responsible for the injustices. The government can bring these injustices to halt.
Boom.
Insert Palestinians there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I made the tweet. They
Right.
don't
Yeah.
revolt. They don't attack. They revolt.
Right.
And you're not going to tell them how they can revolt.
Anyone here would say, if somebody just stormed into your house and said, no, this is my house now, and confine you to, let's say, the bathroom, you don't have access to your kitchen, your living room, whatever, they just confine you to a room in your house. What are you going to do? You're going to take it, or you're going to act up in defense?
Right.
You know? So
y'all have fought for less. I know y'all's brothers and sisters. All right? They took your teddy bear and you fucked them up. That's what happened. We got Malcolm again.
We got more.
And we feel that our people have reached the point wherein we can see that we're going to have to go to war against the racists in this country and make war against them ourselves in order to preserve our own peace and in order to preserve our own lives and our own property. And this is not advocating any kind of violence. This is being prepared to retaliate against those who are violent with us. And we think that this is the only language that the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Council and the George Lincoln Rockwells and these other racists and extremists understand. It's not advocating violence. Our people there are already the victims of violence and have been the victims of brutal violence on the part of the Klan. We're advocating self-defense units and self-defense units alone.
Right. So the same way that Israel has a right to defend themselves, well, the thing is, Palestinians are considered subhuman, so they don't think of them anything at all. But if you're thinking of it from more of a humanistic standpoint, then they also have the right to, and then we're not promoting violence here. But
you don't have to give the disclaimer. You don't have to give the
but
disclaimer.
I think I have to say, no, I think I do have to say it.
Disclaimer.
But, you know, but like,
I feel
as
you,
you said,
Israelis, Collin,
as you said, Pasta,
Collin, they use a term calling mow the lawn.
Yes.
Right.
Fucking carpet bombing the place while they're keeping people in there that have no freedom of travel and movement. You're not going to sit there and tell these people how to revolt. Somebody said, "Oh, they've gone back a step because the way they did it." We just mentioned all the other ways they're inhumane to the Palestinian people on a regular basis. And if you simply look at the numbers, 5,000 plus killed over the last 12 years in these conflicts compared to 250.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry. I'm done giving that disclaimer anymore because it's bullshit.
Every Israeli
and
citizen
all those people really
is required to be in the IDF.
Yes.
Like,
so everybody over the age of 18 is a military personnel.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? I mean, none of these people who are calling Hamas barbaric and animal have said anything when Israel inflicts their pain and their punishment on the Palestinian people. None of them. So they should all shut the F up. Hypocritical at best.
You got one last thing, right?
One more. Last one. And we probably should do a deep dive on this guy because I was only found out about this guy on Monday when I was doing this research, but I think we definitely should look at this guy a little bit more. So this is
especially get mustache grooming tips.
This is Ghassan Kanafani. He was a Palestinian activist and journalist. He was one of the forefront guys for the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine movement. So he actually died, as they all do, young. So he died, I believe, in 1972. But here was an interview that I found that he was speaking in terms of, I guess this is around the 60s that he was talking about,
the
Israeli occupation. So he was doing an interview here regarding what that was like back then. So if you can play that too.
This people, the Palestinian people, prefer to die standing than to lose its case. We achieved proving that the king is wrong. We achieved proving that this nation is going to continue fighting till victory. We achieved that our people could never be defeated. We achieved teaching every single person in this world that we are a small, brave nation who are going to fight to the last drop of blood to put justice for ourselves after the world failed in giving it to us.
The civil war has been quite fruitless.
It's not a civil war. It's a people defending themselves against a fascist government, which you are defending because just King Hussein has an Arab passport. It's not a civil war.
Well, a conflict.
It's not a conflict. It's a liberation movement fighting for justice.
Well, whatever it might be best called.
It's not whatever, because this is where the problems start. Because this is what makes you ask all your questions. This is exactly where the problems start. This is a people who is discriminated, is fighting for his rights. This is the story.
Why won't your organization engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks. You mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Talk to stop fighting, to stop the death and the misery, the destruction, the pain.
The misery and the destruction and the pain and the death of whom?
Of Palestinians, of Israelis, of Arabs.
Of the Palestinian people who are uprooted, thrown in the camps, living in starvation, killed for 20 years, and forbidden to use even the name Palestinians.
They're better that way than dead, though.
Maybe to you, but to us, it's not. To us, to liberate our country, to have dignity, to have respect, to have our mere human rights is something as essential as life itself.
Notice what the interviewer said there. It was like, better for you to live in a hellhole than death.
Right. Yeah, better for you to be tortured.
That's awesome.
What was that line, Pasta? Like talking the sword,
all.
talking to the neck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's just wow. Can you send me that clip?
Sure.
Collin and Reef, send me the Malcolm X clips too as well. I'd like to have those all today.
Yes, sir.
I mean that is just awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, this was hard because obviously we've just been so inundated with so much misinformation, and then just a lot of the mainstream media has just gone to bat for Israel, which has just been sickening to watch, so, and we're not hearing anything regarding the Palestinian angle at all. So, Reef and I deemed it important that, of course, being an independent media, we have the means to do that, and we have the means to offer truth to people, but also more importantly, and I think in our audience, they have an understanding of this by now, is that, all of this stems from capitalism, Zionism, settler colonial, all the isms that have put the Palestinians in this position, for 7 decades. And and the idea that, as you said, they tried the peaceful route and nothing happened. So now
and their water was poisoned and their children were like beaten. Like even with that, like this is the place where they have facial tracking on rifles on gates that children have to walk through. Like, and then we go buy those rifles because they do such a good job on them. Like, this is the issue. It's yes, it's foreign policy, but that foreign policy comes back home, and if you're gonna get it wrong, it means you're gonna get a lot of other stuff wrong. Like, if you're both sides in this issue, you should be ashamed. Like,
right.
And I mean that for all of the above.
Dr. West, like, just as an aside, I'm so disappointed that he is getting this wrong. Like he went off on Harvard students, basically saying there's nuance to this issue. No, there isn't.
No, there's not. Like, it's very simple.
There's no nuance. No, you
need nuance because you're trying to sell more books.
Palestine, and here you are. Probably your former students actually doing the right thing, and you're demolishing them on account of them being hard and heavy on the reality of Israel. Like, it's just really, really disappointing. But that so many people that have just gone this evil, actually just really both sizing it, I think to me is way worse. Because these are people that allegedly should know better.
Right.
But I will say I think one thing I could say for independent media for the most part, for what at least who we watch, I think, I think we had a Zoom call like at INN for anyone who wanted to kind of check in, but the idea that people were saying, like, within independent media, we have to get this issue right. Like, we might have various opinions based on certain topics, politically and otherwise, but I think in this instance,
I think that was
this is
Yo-Yo and Jamie, Pasa.
Right. This is one of those issues where I believe that we in independent media have to be solid on, because especially since for many of us, we've been reporting on this for years. So the idea that people now are kind of, saying that this mess towards, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and like, we need to stand in solidarity with Israel. It's really disconcerting for a lot of people, but it has been encouraging to see, even online, the amount of support, the Palestinian community has been getting, in terms of, this solidarity that I've seen. So we just have to kind of continue that in terms of the propaganda machine that has already been fueling against the Palestinians in mainstream media. So like I said, we're probably going to talk. Well, I have another segment on this later, but we're probably going to be talking.
Closing thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, listen, on Friday, I have Mark Sloboda coming on Jimmy Dore show to talk about the geopolitical ramifications of this whole situation. I think that's something that has not been talked about enough. But it seems like the ruling class is slowly pivoting us towards World War III. you know, and the language right now, it takes a lot of courage to talk about the things we're talking about right now, because nobody is speaking up for what the Palestinians have gone through. And we have no friends in Washington whatsoever, zero. We haven't had anybody who's been able to speak up for what's really going on. And it's just frightening to see the way everybody in lockstep went together and are trying to, you know, demonize the Palestinians by what they claim Hamas, without, you know, the Palestinian resistance, other factions just did this last weekend, you know. I mean, and it's just frightening because it's so much hypocrisy. If you just go back to when George Carlin said, you know, it's kind of crazy the language they use. They call, you know, Israeli murderers commandos, but they call, you know, Palestinian fighters terrorists. And they've been doing this for quite some time, and they're still continuing to do this. And, you know, I think a lot of people have known, you know, with the billions of dollars we give Israel every year, we're cucks to Israel, and they control a lot of our media. They control a lot of our way of lives. We fund them completely. They have Medicare for all. They have a lot of funding. They have a whole, you know, educational apparatus because we give them this money on a regular basis, yet we get none of it. And it's time for people to wake up and say no more. The best thing we can do, and this is so funny because at the end of the day, you know, I mean, one of the best tweets that I saw out on Saturday morning was Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. But he said, well, that coalition between, you know, the anti-populist, the populist left and the populist right, that was short-lived, meaning the populist right just took off their mask. It was short-lived. But at the end of the day, when you look at Rage Against the War Machine, where we got to meet Collin, some of our best allies from the, you know, the populist left or the anti-war, anti-imperialist left, whatever you want to call us, is still those libertarians that are like, you know, pushing back and condemning this. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but that looks like that is the coalition. And I'm really just upset that, you know, what Tulsi said, what Bobby said, you know, I can expect Lindsey Graham and, you know, Nikki Haley to be the bloodthirsty, warmongering Zionists that they are. I kind of expected Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene to be there too. But those comments from those two were damaging, and I think they were damaging to his campaign. I think that the crowd that he had on Monday was a lot lighter than it could have been because of the things he said. And people like Daniel McAdams, once again, that libertarian-minded person, called him out and said, "Look at you! You just tanked your whole fucking campaign." You know, and I pushed back on Nick from RBN a couple months ago when he said that, like, he just tanked his campaign. I'm like, no, he did not. But man, he sure as hell put a big dent in it the other day on Monday. I mean, talk about that crow. I got to go eat a little bit.
Between that and his qualified immunity stance, which that people just miss that, where he just flip-flopped on that, where he was saying that we should end qualified immunity because you should, like, so that we can actually.
For who?
For cops, for any judges,
pharmaceutical companies.
Them too. Like, how do you, like, they literally, we can sue doctors supposedly, like, you know, so who knows?
The whole thing about it is that one of the main reasons I was out there to support him, and the argument I made when we had our Zoom call the other day to Collin was, Collin, I get where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. I don't want to lessen the death, and I don't want to lessen the destruction that these people have done, especially when it comes to Israel against the Palestinians. However, I'm going to always look at what we can get. What's the net gain? And it seems with this guy, we have a big net gain. And one of those big net gains was no more war with Russia. The way he would speak about Russia, that we need to put ourselves in the feet and in the shoes of Russian citizens and understand where they're coming from. Well, he just pissed that out the window with that comment when he said unambiguous
Putin was a thug
supporting Israel
a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, they all have said thug and gangster.
I know
and
that's
stuff, but I mean, even still, his rhetoric when it came to Russia, it was about putting ourselves in their shoes. He would tell that story about the Russian spy that would come and live with him. So at the end of the day, I thought he was the best to stop us from getting into World War III until those comments that were not only justifying the carpet bombing that came from Israel right after this whole situation, because he unambiguously standing by Israel no matter what, and talking about standing her in an hour of need. But like I said, and we're going to talk about these geopolitical ramifications and how it can spin out of control this Friday with Mark Sloboda, who's one of the best at this stuff. What does that mean? Are you going to stand with Israel when Israel attacks Iran and Russia comes to Iran's aid? Does that mean you're going to, once again, this is completely hypocritical what you're saying here, and completely contradicts the main reason we were supporting you, to keep us out of World War III. Well, with this statement you just made over here, you just pissed it out the window. And I, for one, am done. But that doesn't mean I want to make an announcement here before I take off, because I have to take off in a little bit. I am still going to go cover RFK. I'm going to still push to get my interview. And when I get questions with him, gloves are off. Gloves are off. I was going to be pushing back against them hardcore anyways, but now gloves are fucking off. Please support me in my work for Lahaina.
Yeah.
Please support me in my work to go for RFK, because even though I'm going to change that whole freaking thing about he's a once in a lifetime candidate, because he's not. He just showed that.
Yeah.
You know, and shame on you, Tulsi Gabbard, for those comments whatsoever.
See,
you know damn well that we fund these fucking Islamic groups. We fund the most hardcore radicals, from the Mujahideen to Al-Qaeda to ISIS, baby. It's us. We're one who's footing the bill. We're the ones who are promoting the death and destruction. We need to look inward for once and for all. And that's all I got to say on that.
See, we saw similarities between RFK, Tulsi, Bernie. They all kind of have the same playbook. They just don't want people to be burned again. Like, you know, everyone's got attachment issues in this space, man. Like, we can, you know, like, I love you, but that abusive relationship ain't helping us, you know? Like,
which is why I said to you, Pasta, is like, as we kind of adopted here, INN, we're team none of the above.
Yeah, we learned it from watching you, Dad. You know,
right?
Like,
yeah, but like the only people that we can rely on, it's each other. So what we need to do is kind of encourage each other to do the work that our politicians aren't doing, and standing up and kind of calling out politicians on the work that they should be doing. And that's kind of where my focus has and continues to be. Now, if a politician wants to come along and support that, great.
Yeah, good for them.
But we're not going. I'm done trying to get a politician to give me shit that I deserve. I'm done.
Yeah, we can't.
I've been done with that.
We can't push them left. That's not happening. We've tried that. You know,
I'm going to try and get it for myself, and within through that, try to elevate and empower others to get it too. Yeah, and that's my priority right now. So,
Pastor, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. We know
guys,
you're a busy
thank
man.
you so much. This is my fourth show of the day. I hope I had enough energy.
Dude.
And yeah, like I said, I'm gonna reach out to a couple people tonight. Speak to Jesse Jett as well. The trip is probably planning. We're probably moving around to the 20th of this month through the 25th. I'm lining stuff up. I've already been made phone calls. It's going to take a village. It's going to take a lot of help. You know what I'm saying? These trips are not cheap, but however, we could rock them on a dime. And I hope you guys enjoyed my documentary, because I was able to take something, you know, from people who put me on the ground, boots on the ground, and produce something I thought that was very tangible too, as well. So thank you guys for always supporting me, and thank you for the love. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person someday.
Thank you, Pasta. Appreciate it.
Tell the people where they can find you.
At Yo Pasta on Twitter, X, at the Jimmy Dore Show when he's on vacation, at Craig Pasta Jardula, one word. When it comes to my new YouTube channel that hasn't verified or monetized me yet, they're slow rolling me. So we might have to start a rumble in the next couple days, because it's getting out of hand. And whether if you like Jackson Hinkle or not, I know a lot of people don't. That's beside the point. He didn't deserve to be platformed, and this shit is getting out of hand. So I guess we have to go look at other platforms. And you know, I'm not crazy about Rumble either. But that house isn't on fire yet. So I guess we got to go where we can go to try to tape it up until if it ever straightens out, until it does straighten out.
I mean, best case scenario, we kind of pull our resources together and start our own media.
Self-hosting something.
Something.
They own the satellites, guys. It doesn't make a difference. They own the satellites. And here's the thing: just like when I go to Latin America, the United States empire has to be careful with certain countries, because they don't want to lose the country completely, right? So they have to be careful with their empire. They can't just come in like a bulldozer. So they got to be careful with their censorship. They just can't go in like a bulldozer. So they have to allow us to go in spaces, because if they do go, you know, if they do censor way too much and go too crazy, they will have pitchforks in the street, and they don't want to do that. So just like when they have a country like Honduras, they go little by little. They can't go full-fledged and be just a straight-up imperialistic, lock it down. The United States is controlling it because like Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, they'll lose the country. So they have to let the devil inside the door. In the case they think they're letting the angel in the door, we got to go play with the devil, and that's what we have to do. We have to take advantage of these spaces while they are letting us in until they set that house on fire. Right now, Rumble looks like the best place to go and at least start some stuff up until we can find other spots.
Which, if this gets taken down off YouTube, which it might, you can find it on Rumble. We got that there.
It might.
So,
it might.
You know, but appreciate you coming, Pasta. I love you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Pasta.
See you out in the trenches, friend.
Collin, you're beautiful. So are you, Reef. I love you guys. You know that. I always
Thanks,
will.
bud.
Okay.
Love you too, bud. Peace.
Peace.